tell me if you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
And what is that item?
This is the piece of silver duct tape that I collected from the ground next to the driver's side of the vehicle.
And it's item number 9?
That is correct.
And placard number 1?
Placard number 1.
And is it in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected it on March 23rd, 2016?
It appears to be, yes.
At this time, I'd move to admit what's been pre-marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 94 into evidence as People's Exhibit 94.
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
Thank you, Judge. May I have the witness published? Do you want to take that out and show the jury? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Moving on to People's Exhibit 48. What's in that photo?
That is the the driver's seat of the vehicle. There were 2 cell phones that were located on that seat, and underneath you can just barely see the edge of it, but there's a that white, yellow, and red bag. There was a partial roll of duct tape underneath that bag.
Okay. And is it those are the same?
At the rear of that vehicle on the driver's side.
And what are those items located on the bed of the truck?
Those were bottles of brake fluid, gas line additive, that type of, different fluids that were present on top of that cover.
Okay. Those were present when you got there?
That is correct.
Exhibit 51. What do we see here?
Oh, it's not showing.
Oh.
That is another shot of the passenger side of the vehicle.
And what do we see at the bottom of the passenger side?
Directly beneath the door, that is a gray and blue blanket that had stains of suspected blood on it.
Okay. Exhibit 52. Are these items now same items that we saw in the previous photo, but now with placard?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's go specifically to 53. What is that?
That is that previously mentioned gray and blue blanket.
And I'm going to show you what's in pre-marked identification of People's Proposed Exhibit 95. I'm going to have you do the same thing that you did with the prior with Exhibit 94. Looking at it, tell me if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
Is it in the same, or what is it?
That is the blue and gray blanket with the stains of suspected blood.
And is it in the same or substantially the same condition it was in when you recovered it on March 23rd?
Yes, it is.
Judge, I'd move to admit People's Exhibit 95.
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
Thank you, Judge. May I have the witness published? Show the back side as well. Thank you. People's Exhibit 54. What is in this photo?
This was a silver condom wrapper that also had stains of suspected blood that was on the ground next to the passenger side of the vehicle.
55. live?
That was a 9mm live round that was also on the ground a few feet away from the passenger side of the vehicle.
Do you know how far away from the vehicle it was, feet in feet?
Approximately, I want to say 5 to 6 feet.
Okay. May I approach, Judge?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to have you do the same thing with this. I'm showing you what's in pre-marked for identification as People's Proposed Exhibit 96. Can you open that and take a look at it? Tell me if you recognize it and if it's in the same condition as when you recovered it on the scene.
Yes, it is.
And do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and it's in the same condition?
Yes, it is.
What is it?
This is a 9mm live round bullet from the ground next to the vehicle on the passenger side.
Thank you. And Judge, I move to admit People's Exhibit 96.
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
Thank you, Judge. Go ahead, take it out. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Go to People's Exhibit 56. What is in this photo?
That is a partial roll of black duct tape. It was like the end piece that was still attached to the cardboard core that was on the ground next to the passenger side of the vehicle.
Judge, may I approach again?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you what's in pre-marked for identification, People's Proposed Exhibit 97. Can I have you do the same things that you did previously?
This appears to be the same roll of duct tape that I did put on evidence that day.
Okay. Judge, at this point, I'd move to admit People's Exhibit 97.
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
Thank you, Chief. Go ahead, take it out. Thank you, ma'am. And what item number did you give? We know it's placard 5. What item number did you give the duct tape?
This would be item number 13.
Thank you. Go on to People's Exhibit 57. What is this?
Those were a pair of black sunglasses that were maybe about a foot or two away from that roll of duct tape.
Okay. And 58, is this a wider shot of some of those items that we just went over?
That is correct.
59? Is it not?
That is a shot of the interior of the vehicle, shot from just outside of the passenger door.
Okay. And a close-up of the passenger seat?
That is correct.
And what did you observe about the passenger seat?
There were stains of suspected blood on that passenger seat. There were also stains on the passenger door, on the interior surface, on the floor of that passenger side, and also on that center console.
And People's Exhibit 50.
That is a shot of the back area of the front passenger seat.
And suspected blood there as well?
That is correct.
People's Exhibit 61.
That is a shot of the rear crew cab. It's a crew cab type pickup, and that was the rear passenger compartment from the passenger side.
And 62.
That is just showing, typically take a shot of the ignition to show if there's an ignition intact, if there are keys present, and there were in this case.
63.
That is a shot southward showing the area of debris as well as evidence that is scattered throughout that field behind the truck.
And what types of evidence did you discover back in this area?
Clothing, there were some strands of hair that were stained with suspected blood, more duct tape, there was a plastic juice bottle, there was a tampon that was stained with suspected blood, some mail that was addressed to the victim, just a couple of utility bills, to be specific. There was also a blood trail that led back to the area of that tree where the clothing was found.
Okay. I'm going to kind of go quickly through these next couple. So this is People's Exhibit 64. Same thing, but close-up describing the blood trail and the debris that you then subsequently tagged and marked.
That is correct.
Okay. And 65, a close-up, is this a close-up of one of the Post-its in that pile?
That is correct.
And what was on that Post-it?
Some stains of suspected blood.
And let's go to 66. What do you see in this photo?
That's continuing a little bit further south, getting closer toward that tree. There was a blood trail on the ground. You can see on some of those rocks, as well as that piece of tree stump. There were also some stains of suspected blood on that as well. And toward the top of that picture, you can see a tree where there were some items of clothing that were torn and also had suspected blood stains on them.
And is this, in Exhibit 67, is this the blood stain that you were talking about on the rock?
That is correct.
And Exhibit 68, same thing, blood staining on the grass?
That is correct.
You mentioned earlier some hairs that were found. Is that what's represented in People's Exhibit 69?
Yes, it is.
And 70, is this another rock with blood staining on it?
Correct.
Exhibit 71, what do we see there?
That is some items of clothing that were, there was some damage to them, as well as they were stained with suspected blood. They were all throughout that area where that tree is located.
Okay, and you recovered those items?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What's in People's Exhibit 72?
That was a tan bra that had some suspected blood stains on it.
Okay. And Exhibit 73?
There was a shirt, as well as some pieces of black sweat types, like yoga or sweatpants, that also had stains of suspected blood on them.
And is 74 a close-up of those yoga pants that you were just describing?
That is part of it, yes. They were in two separate pieces from what I can recall.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's in pre-marked at People's Exhibit, proposed exhibit rather, 100. It's already open. Can you take a look and tell me if you recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
And are they in the same or substantially the same condition as when you recovered them?
Yes, they are.
Which I've moved to admit what's in pre-marked People's proposed exhibit 100.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
Thank you, Judge. You want to go ahead and take those out?
This is that same tan bra with the suspected blood stains that was seen in that previous photograph. This is the gray shirt, which is torn and is stained with suspected blood. This is a black sock, which also has suspected blood stains on it. This is one part of those pants. It's a little difficult to see the blood stains, but because of the lighting, but this is the area. We can see it a little bit better on this side.
For the record, I believe the witness was showing you this.
That is part of the black yoga pants.
And the back side.
The back side of it. It appeared to be the back side based on the way the seam looked.
Okay.
And this is the other section of those pants. And there are stains of suspected blood seen on the lower part of the legs.
Thank you. want to go to People's Exhibit 75. What's in this photo?
That lighter colored object to the left is a pair of white and pink women's underpants that had stains of suspected blood on them. There were also stains of blood on that tree stump.
76.
That is showing northward view toward the truck, showing that debris area that is marked with placards of various items of evidence.
77.
And that's another shot looking south toward that tree where those items of evidence, additional items of evidence are located.
Additional placards.
Exactly.
Let's look specifically at 78. Is this a photo of the mail, some of the mail that you were talking about earlier?
That is correct. That was a DTE energy bill in the name and address of the victim.
Okay. And People's Exhibit 79.
That was another piece of silver duct tape that had stains of suspected blood on it.
Exhibit 80.
That is an empty bottle of Tropicana brand grape drink that had stains of suspected blood on the bottle.
And let's look specifically now, People's Exhibit 81. This is an item that you referenced a moment ago. What is in this photo?
That is a pair of women's underwear that were stained with suspected blood.
Judge, may I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been pre-marked for identification of People's Proposed Exhibit 99. Can you open it up, take a look, tell us if you recognize it, and if it's in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected it on March 23rd.
Yes, it is.
And how do you recognize it?
These are the item of underwear that I collected.
And what item number is that?
This would be item number 18.
In placard 10.
Correct.
Okay. Should I move to admit People's Exhibit 99?
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
You can take them out.
Right there.
Take them in.
Got it.
People's Exhibit 82.
Those were the items of clothing that I had previously showed you that were in that large bag.
Okay. Exhibit 83.
That is another shot showing, looking northward toward the vehicle and showing the evidence on the ground. I believe number 12 was the strands of suspected hair stained with suspected blood.
And in People's Exhibit 84, is that what you just described?
That is correct.
Okay. Give me 1 minute. May I approach?
You may.
Same process, ma'am. I'm going to show you what's been pre-marked with People's Proposed Exhibit 101. So open it, take a look, tell us if it's in the same or substantially the same condition, and if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what is it?
There should be the strands of suspected hair stained with suspected blood
Can you
inside the
open it up
bag.
and take a look, tell us what's in there?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So we move to admit People's Exhibit 100.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
If you're able to hold it carefully.
Very carefully. Yeah, they're
And was there anything unique about those strands of hair?
They appear to have been colored with a like a burgundy colored dye, from my observation.
And you mentioned those had suspected blood.
Yes, they did.
Go to People's Exhibit 85. What do we see in this photo?
These were baby wipe type cloths that were on the ground next to the driver's side of the vehicle that had some stains of suspected blood and dirt on them.
People's Exhibit 86. You mentioned earlier there was a tampon found. Is that's what represented in this photo?
That is correct.
87.
That is a black flash drive, just seemed out of place there, so I went ahead and collected it, just in case it had any evidentiary value.
88.
That is a shot toward the driver's side of the vehicle, showing those placards from that previously described evidence.
89.
That is a shot toward the north, showing those same placards and the various items of evidence that were out there in the field.
I want to show you, I think I skipped over item number 16, which is placard 8. I'm going to approach with what's been pre-marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 98.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Judge. Same process?
This is the item of silver duct tape, the second piece of silver duct tape from that field, and I do recognize it. It is in the same condition as when I packaged it.
Judge, I'd move to admit People's Exhibit 98.
Defense has no objection, Judge.
Shall be received.
It's going to be a little tricky. This is the same piece of duct tape, and there are stains of suspected blood seen on the back side of it here. And you can see a little bit better there toward the bottom.
Thank you. People's Exhibit 90. Is this a photo that depicts the placards on the driver's side and back of all the items of evidence that you collect?
That is correct.
And People's Exhibit 91, same thing, but this time on the passenger side.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, as part of your job and duties and responsibilities as an evidence technician, do you often make a scene sketch?
Yes, I do.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes, I did.
And is that what's represented in People's 92?
Yes, it is.
And are there two pages of your scene sketch?
Yes, one is the actual sketch, and one is the legend indicating what each of those placards, each of those numbered placards indicates.
Okay, so this would be page 1 of Exhibit 92, and this depicts where all of those items were located.
That is correct.
Okay. And page 2 is the legend that you described.
That is correct.
I'm going to show you one more piece of evidence that you recovered. May I approach Judge with People's Proposed Exhibit 103? Same process and last time, I believe.
Yes, I recognize this item as a partial roll of silver duct tape that I recovered from the driver's side seat of that vehicle.
And is this in the same substantially the same condition as when you recovered it?
Yes, it is.
To admit People's Exhibit 103.
No objection, Judge.
Thank you. After you processed the scene, did you go anywhere else or do any other type of collection for this case?
Yes, I was requested to make the location of the St. John Hospital Emergency Department.
And did you go there?
Yes, I did.
What was your purpose in going there?
I was requested to photograph the victim, and also while I was there, they requested that I take some items that were turned over by the hospital staff and to put them on evidence.
And did you photograph those items?
Yes, I did.
And is that what's depicted in People's Exhibit 93?
Those were indicated to me to be the belongings of the victim that were turned over to me by the St. John Hospital staff.
And did you tag those items?
Yes, I did.
What item number?
That would be item number, if I may refer to my report.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, it would. That would be 3 bags containing patient's clothing and sundry belongings on item number 27.
Did you collect anything else from the hospital?
Yes, I was also given a bag that was sealed with the the complainant's name on it that were a pair of black metal handcuffs.
Do you know where those handcuffs came from?
They were just turned over to me by the staff saying that they were part of the investigation.
And did you tag those items?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to, Judge, may I approach with People's Proposed Exhibit 102?
You may.
Did you open that? Tell me if you recognize it, and if it's in the same or substantially the same condition.
Yes, it is.
And what is it?
This appears to be the envelope containing the handcuffs that was turned over to me by the St. John ER staff.
And could you take a look in the envelope and open the envelope and... And are those, flip it around, are those the handcuffs that you recovered?
That is correct.
So then you would to admit or Exhibit 102.
No objection.
Thank you. You mentioned yesterday, I believe, when you were telling us about the things that you did, and just now that you photographed the victim in this case.
Yes, I did.
How many photos did you take?
She would only allow me to take 2 to 3 photographs.
And you took those photographs?
Yes, I did.
What did you photograph in these photos?
Her face and also her hands.
Why did you choose those areas?
Those were the areas that she requested that I photograph, and also because her other injuries had been treated. They would have involved having to have her bandages removed. So she had injuries to her face, so that appeared to be the best place to document.
You mentioned yesterday you also photographed the defendant,
Yes, I did.
and I believe you looked at those yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Did you do anything else in terms of investigation?
No, I did not.
Nothing else, Judge?
Cross-examination.
Yes, Judge. Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
Officer, I'm sorry, how long have you been out police officer?
I'm actually a civilian, but I have been employed with the Evidence Tech Unit since February 8th of 1999.
And what type of training is involved in achieving your position?
We've had training through Oakland Community Colleges. They're police investigative and Fire Training Academy, also through Michigan State Police and through Detroit Police Department.
Now, when, in general, can you summarize what your duties are? For example, do you get involved with fingerprints or any lab testing or any of that such duties in your job?
Only in the collection of fingerprints. We do not do any analysis of any evidence at all.
Whose job would that be?
That would be, in the terms of fingerprints, that would be our latent print unit, and any other lab work is handled by Michigan State Police.
So when you say collection of fingerprints, that is part of what you would do in a typical crime scene, correct?
That is correct.
So would that involve like what we would see on TV or in the movies where you'd be dusting for prints? I'm sure it's much more scientific, but would that be part of what you do?
Basically, yes.
Okay. Do you happen to, you had mentioned that you found a live round laying outside the truck, correct?
That is correct. Excuse me, correct.
Would it be part of what you do to match that live round to the handgun that was found at the scene to see if it actually fit inside the gun? Is that something you would do?
That is not something I would do, no.
So basically you would just collect that evidence and secure it.
Yeah, collect it and document it and secure it.
When you arrived, when you arrived at the scene on that day, do you recall approximately how long it took you to respond? Is sort of a strong word, but I imagine you want to get there as soon as possible, correct?
That is
to
correct.
Preserve the scene.
I would say approximately 20 to 30 minutes from the time we received the call.
Now, do you rely on other officers that would be there preceding you? They're there before you to quote-unquote secure the scene.
Yes, we do.
Okay. What would that entail in making sure that that scene was secure?
There would always be a marked car there, at least one marked car. Uniformed officers, they should have the scene ideally taped off if crime scene tape is available. But there should no traffic, no foot traffic, no vehicle traffic, anything like that should be allowed through that scene.
So basically before you or another evidence tech would show up on the scene, they should have no pedestrians, obviously. Nobody that's not associated with law enforcement should be walking around or wandering around that area, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And is that the way you found the scene that day when you arrived?
Yes, it was only police officers that were related to the scene out there.
Was it taped?
I do not recall if it was taped or not.
Okay, you described this, and we've heard other testimony, that this is a pretty big, desolate area, correct?
That is correct.
And did you personally, I believe you testified to the prosecutor's questions that the area was pretty beat up. There was a lot of debris and trash and so forth.
Correct.
Not just around the vehicle that was there, but the whole area was covered with garbage, correct?
That is correct.
Overgrown weeds and such?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when we talked about the live round that was found, just so we're all clear, that's not a round that's been fired by a weapon. That's an intact round, correct?
That is correct. It has not been fired.
I mean, that bullet has not been shot through any gun?
Correct.
Okay. And that was found outside on the ground?
Yeah,
correct?
to the east of the vehicle.
It was not inside the vehicle, but it was on the ground?
Correct.
Now, would this be something in your role as an evidence tech, that when you collect these fingerprints, would that be something that you would collect fingerprints from and then give that to somebody to analyze?
Typically, fingerprints cannot, using powder, the methods that we would use in the field would not be an ideal way of getting fingerprints from cartridge casings or bullets that would have to be submitted to the lab for them to chemically or physically using like fuming methods to obtain fingerprints from something like that.
I see. Is that the only method that you personally use, or is policy of the Detroit Police Department to use the powder? Is that what you typically would use?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there other methods that can be used in the field, such as, I know there's a type of adhesive tape that's used from time to time to possibly lift a print. Is that something that you have used in the past?
We would use the tape after applying the powder to an area to be printed, and if a print was found, then we would utilize tape to remove that fingerprint.
And that tape is then given to someone else to analyze, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So your job is vital to not so much securing the scene. That should probably be done before you get there. Is that a safe comment?
That is correct.
Okay, so when you show up, you're ready to collect, and is part of your job to analyze, or is it just to secure what you see and feels appropriate to tag and bag, so to speak?
Yeah, we do not do any analysis. We document and collect.
Okay, I see. Did you have the opportunity to either look at or inspect the weapon that was found at the scene?
No, I did not.
Okay. Were you told by one of the other officers that a weapon was retrieved from the scene and what caliber it was or what type of gun?
No, I was not.
Okay. Do you know, as of today, while you're sitting in the witness chair, what type of weapon was?
No, I do not.
Okay. Would part of your role in, I'm sorry, I forgot the word you used, I think it was collecting evidence. Would part of your role be to, you already said you didn't have a chance to inspect the weapon, correct? That's what you said.
That is correct.
So you couldn't tell myself or the jury if that gun had been recently fired?
No, I could not.
Okay. Is part of what you do in terms of dusting and taping for fingerprints, would you have the opportunity, or did you have the opportunity, to encounter Mr. Muntean, who was placed in custody that day?
Only when I photographed him in the back of the scout car.
So you weren't able to ascertain whether there was any gunpowder residue on his hands, about his person, on his clothing?
No, I would not, only because the City of Detroit, our policy is we do not perform gunshot residue tests.
Okay. Do you have any idea why that is?
Right, as of right now, nobody as far as I know, nobody in the state of Michigan even will test them.
So there's no testing done to see if someone has recently fired a weapon, or if there's gunpowder residue from the I mean, that's typical. If a gun is fired and someone has fired a gun, there's going to be gunpowder residue that sort of, lack of a better term, plumes out from the weapon.
Correct, but we have not performed gunshot residue tests. Detroit Police Department Crime Scene Unit has not done that for several years.
Okay. The securing of the evidence, it seems like by the prosecution's presentation that you took a lot of photographs of the scene, correct?
That is correct.
That's fairly typical of any scene that's been secured. Just take numerous photographs.
The more photographs, the better, yes.
I see. You mentioned when you were speaking to the prosecutor that 2 cell phones were recovered. Do you know, or have you been told, if those phones were in the same position, or were they moved by anyone at that scene, including the police officers?
I was not told any of that. I just documented and photographed what I saw when I arrived at the scene.
So you really honestly don't have any substantiation that any of this evidence hadn't been picked up by besides the gun. We won't talk about the gun. We know that was moved by prior testimony. But my question is, do you know if any of the other evidence that was found, whether physical or otherwise, had been touched or handled by anyone at that scene before you arrived?
I can only say what I saw when I arrived at the scene and what I documented.
Okay. So your answer is no. You can't really say whether it had been handled before you got there.
That is correct.
Okay. The 2 cell phones, you said, and just going by your report, they were similar in nature. Were they both colored white?
One was white, one was black.
And they were both found in the driver's compartment?
Yeah, they were sitting on the driver's seat.
On the driver's seat. And I'm not sure if we got into this. I know I didn't ask you these questions, but you were there, and obviously your job is to have a keen eye and collect the information. Was it the vehicle, was it a sort of like a bench seat, or was it more of I'm kind of dating myself here, a bucket seat?
Well, the front seats were like captain's chair, you know, like regular typical seats in the front that had a fold-down console armrest with a storage compartment underneath it, and then the back seat was a typical bench seat.
Do you remember, and I'm glad you brought that up, do you remember if that large center console was up or down when you got there?
I can't recall if it was up or down. I may have raised it myself at some point to look inside of there, but I cannot recall exactly whether it was up or down when I first got there.
I appreciate your candor. The baby wipes, did you retrieve from inside the vehicle any sort of container that would have held these baby wipes at some time?
I did not process that. I primarily just collected the cell phones and that one roll of duct tape and took photographs. The actual vehicle itself was processed at our vehicle facility where we store evidence vehicles.
I'm sorry, what was your testimony in terms of where the baby wipes were found in relation to the truck?
They were on the ground next to the driver's side of the truck.
Okay, but as far as you know, you didn't find, like, I mean, again, I'm dating myself, a typical, like, a baby wipe canister or something inside the vehicle?
Not that I can recall offhand. No.
Okay. Is it your testimony, and there was, it's not your role to test those baby wipes for DNA or blood or anything like that? It's just to basically compile that, seal it, make sure that it's preserved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you really don't have any idea if those baby wipes were laying on the ground before, because you said that there was so much debris spread around. I mean, that's a possibility, right?
Anything is possible. I just collected what was found on the ground.
Right. Okay, I understand. There was, according to evidence that's been admitted in your testimony, there were 2 rolls of duct tape that were retrieved, correct?
That is correct.
There was that smallish roll that was displayed and published to the jury, which was silver, correct?
Correct.
And then there was there another, I think you indicated it was black?
Yes, it was a just like the end piece attached to the cardboard center core of another roll of duct tape.
Okay, so the black piece where, and everyone knows what duct tape is, everyone's used duct tape. This is at the tail end of it where when you pull it and you're hoping there's this one little bit more so you can do your task. Actually, it tore off the cardboard that was on holding the duct tape together, correct?
That is correct.
Did you retrieve any substantial pieces of that tape, whether inside the vehicle or outside the vehicle?
I myself did not find any of the black colored duct tape that I can recall. It was just silver.
Just the silver. And the jury's already has seen that already, right? You
Correct.
pulled it out of the envelope, and the first piece is what intrigued me, and I don't recall the number of the prosecutor's evidence, but that seemed, it was all, lack of a better term, squished together.
Correct.
Okay, so that wasn't a piece of duct tape that extended, so we really don't know how much tape is involved there, do we? Because it's kind of in a big ball.
Correct.
And again, I know I asked you this, I just want to make sure that there was no big wad of black duct tape anywhere found inside the vehicle or outside, correct?
Not that I found myself, no.
Okay. Do you typically have an assistant, or is this something that when you get the call, you just go out there yourself and you handle your business out there in the field?
On this particular day, I was working alone, so in this particular case, I was by myself.
Is that fairly typical, or?
Depends on our staffing level.
Okay. When you arrived, approximately how many uniformed or ununiformed officers were on the scene at that time?
I can only maybe 10 to 12 altogether between the various units that were there.
Okay. The blanket that was found inside the truck?
It was actually on the ground next to the passenger side.
Okay. And you don't know if an officer placed that on the complaining witness in this case. You just looked at it, tagged it, put it inside the bag, and made your notes, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you ever see, was the complaining witness still on the scene when you arrived?
No, she had been transported from the location before my arrival.
Was Mr. Muntean still on the scene when you arrived?
Yes, he was.
Did you have an opportunity to make any observations about him?
Only what I saw him sitting in the back of the scout car and took the photographs.
Okay. We did see the photographs. outside of the red stains that you have testified to previously, did he appear to be in any distress? Was he injured at all?
The only thing that I noted was a small abrasion to his cheek.
Okay. Was it more like it wasn't a gash or a bleeding wound or anything like
Just
that?
like a small scratch.
Okay. So that could have come from anything, correct? You don't know.
I really
that.
can't. Yeah, I cannot tell
Okay.
you.
He wasn't, as far as you know, he wasn't suffering from any sort of puncture wound or bleeding from his nose profusely or anything like that, correct?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. And again, you never had the opportunity, and I think you made it clear to see if there were. Did you retrieve any shell casings from anywhere in the area?
I did not.
Can you explain to the jury what a shell casing is?
Usually I have one with me, but of course today I didn't. A shell casing, there's various parts to a bullet. The shell casing is the cylindrical base of it that actually contains the gunpowder that actually causes that bullet at the end of it to fire. So anytime a gun is fired, shell casing is typically ejected from a weapon if it is a semi-automatic pistol, or if it is a revolver, it stays within the cylinder of the revolver.
So say, for example, this was a revolver, you would never have found it because it would still be inside the gun, right?
Yeah, the only way you would know if you actually had that gun with
Open the gun up.
That is
you would
correct.
Be able to tell. Okay. So say for discussion purposes that it was a semi-automatic weapon. As you said, if that weapon was fired, does someone have to physically have to reach inside that gun, take the casing out, and dispose of it, or is it automatically discharged after it's fired?
If the weapon is functioning, it should be discharged by the weapon.
Okay. So if that, did you find it unusual that you couldn't find a shell casing, whether it's on the ground or whether it's inside the truck? Did you find that unusual at all?
Sometimes in my experience, if it's a revolver was involved, it could have, that could have been one of the reasons why we didn't find it, or if an incident occurs elsewhere where that casing would have been ejected somewhere else other than the original scene, to the scene where we were actually processing it. If it happened elsewhere, the victim ends up somewhere else. We see that on occasion as well.
And please don't misunderstand my questioning. I'm sure you've done a very thorough job specifically on that scene. We're dealing with a relatively small area in terms of that inside of that truck, correct?
Correct.
I mean, it's not a special truck. It's not a Super Duty. It's just what you and I would identify as just a typical truck driving down the road, correct?
Correct.
So you have the front seat, and then you have, was it a full cab in the back?
It was like the smaller crew cab, not the extended cab, but a little bit smaller.
Part of what you would do typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be to, sure you have a flashlight or something like that. Did you have a flashlight that day?
Yes, I did.
Just, I mean, not to fancy it up, but you're on your hands and knees and you got your flashlight. You're looking around the interior of the cab. You're looking in the back seat. You're looking under seats. And you did those duties on that day, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you came up with no shell casing?
Doing a cursory search, I did not find a shell casing at that time.
Okay, thank you. So you also mentioned, and I think it was one of the exhibits presented by the prosecutor, you actually took photographs of the interior of that vehicle, correct?
That is correct.
And specifically, you took photographs, I guess it was from would be the driver's perspective. If you were sitting in that driver's seat, you took a picture, is that correct?
That is correct.
Because you had mentioned that the keys were in the ignition, correct?
That is correct.
Was the vehicle running when you got there?
No, it was not. I do not recall that it was running, no.
But you remember specifically the keys were inside, right?
Yes, they were.
Did you have the opportunity to look at the instrument panel? Was that part of the photographs that you took?
No, I do not believe they were.
Okay. And if you remember, what was it, a late model? Meaning, was it an old truck or a new truck?
It was a later model, a newer model.
So it was a newer model. So you didn't have an opportunity to see if there was any gas inside that vehicle. That wouldn't be something that you would typically do.
That is correct.
Okay. But the keys for sure were in there because we saw them on the screen.
That is correct.
Okay. You mentioned something regarding a blood trail. What specifically do you mean by a blood trail?
Blood trail just means that there are continuous drops of suspected blood in a given area, with a starting point and an ending point.
Now, we have reviewed all the pictures that were presented into evidence, but quite candidly, just because of the positioning, we can't specifically see what's being placed. I know the photographs. We've gone over them with the prosecutor. How far, if you could approximate for me, did the blood trail start at the truck?
If I may refer to my report to refresh
Sure.
my memory, I do believe I did make a notation of that.
Absolutely, thank you.
That trail of suspected blood stain starts, actually used the south curb of Lyford Street as my starting point. It was 47 feet 4 inches south from the south curb, and then it ended up, I don't know if I made a notation of where that tree was, but it ended just maybe a few feet north of that tree where the clothing was.
In your experience and training, in order to leave a blood trail, wouldn't it be necessary to have some sort of open wound or puncture or something of that nature to leave those droplets of blood?
That is correct.
Okay. And I mentioned this to the jury yesterday, and my apologies to the judge, I'm horrible with distances, so would you say the trail extended from that TV or that wall to that wall or further?
Approximately, I'd say, maybe a little bit further.
Okay. So yesterday I identified it as approximately 30 feet. Everybody seemed to agree with that. Was it a little bit further than that, maybe 45 feet? Is that a true statement?
Closer, maybe around like 40, a little bit less than 40.
But you've already testified that Mr. Muntean, based on your observation, had no puncture wounds, wasn't bleeding from his nose. In your opinion, and based on your training and expertise, that blood trail couldn't have came from Mr. Muntean, correct?
It's actually speculation.
I'll rephrase the question, Judge. You don't know where the blood trail came from, correct?
I just observed the blood trail and documented it.
So it's not something scientific, it's something that the jury and myself especially can understand. It's just droplets of blood that lead from point A to point B, correct?
Correct.
And maybe point B back to point A, we don't really know that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that, is it possible to analyze something like that?
In terms of, you would have to have a little bit more detail of the case. I'm not an expert in
I understand
blood
that.
spatter analysis.
But and again, I'm not trying to CSI and all that. What I'm trying to figure out is if it's on grass or dirt, you would actually have to probably take a sample of that grass or dirt and then send that to somebody to analyze the blood, correct?
Correct.
That wasn't done in this case, and that's probably not part of your job, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Your encounter with Mr. Muntean that day was strictly just taking photographs, correct?
That is correct.
You also mentioned you were able to make contact at a later time with the complaining witness, and that was at St. John Hospital, correct?
That is correct.
Do you have any idea in hours how long it took from you to finish what you were doing in the field to meeting with her at the hospital?
I immediately left from that scene, immediately went over to St. John Hospital after I was finished processing and sealing the evidence.
Okay, well, I'm born and raised on the east side, so I know exactly where St. John is, and I know exactly where this area was. So, is it a 15-minute drive for you?
Yes, so I went straight up 94 to Maroth.
Okay. And something struck me. You said she would only allow you to take 2 to 3 photographs, and that was confined to her hands and her face. So is it your testimony that she was uncooperative with you?
She was not uncooperative. She had just appeared very distraught.
She seemed lucid and knew what was going on?
She really didn't speak very much to me, but she spoke with members of the domestic violence investigations section.
Okay. Hair samples were mentioned that, I think specifically on the duct tape, but were those hair samples, if you know, were they actually taken from the duct tape and then sent off to the lab, for lack of a better term?
I'm going to object to the mischaracterization of the evidence. There were no hair samples taken. There was hair found that was entered into evidence, but no hair samples were taken from the duct tape.
I don't know if we're caught up in semantics, Judge. I'm not sure what the difference is of hair samples or hair taken from the scene. It seems to me it's the same thing.
There's no hair
That's
removed
what I'm saying,
in duct tape.
She can explain it.
The hair samples that I collected were not attached to anything. They were on the ground. They were not attached to any duct tape or any other type of evidence.
Okay, I see. So, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to complicate this. Hair can come from any source. It could have came from anyone besides me, apparently. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Judge, can I have 1 minute, please?
You may.
Thank you, officer. I'm set, Judge.
All right. Read the red.
Now, I'm going to start off by showing you what I've now pre-marked as people's proposed exhibit 152. Can you take a look at that? Tell me if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is a picture of a Wet Ones personal wipe package, as well as some business cards that were stained with suspected blood on the ground.
Does that photo fairly inaccurately depict those items as you saw them on March 23rd?
Yes, they do.
Judge, I'd move to admit People's Exhibit 152.
Any objection?
Judge, there's no objection.
Shall be received.
Thank you. Now, you did not tag either of those items as evidence.
That is correct.
Okay, but you did photograph them.
Yes, I did.
The defense counsel is asking you a lot of questions about a baby wipe package or something like that. Is it possible that those baby wipes, or those wipes that you found, came from that package?
It's possible. Just being a mom, I say baby wipes, if anything that looks like a baby wipe.
Okay. And you found that in the debris in the field?
Yes, I did.
Near the blood trail?
Actually, it was near the blood trail, yes.
Okay, thank you. May I publish, Judge?
You may.
When you went and observed, just in your own personal observations, when you went to the hospital to photograph the victim, did you notice anything significant about her hair coloring?
She did have an unusual, like, burgundy tint to her hair, like her hair had been dyed.
In your personal opinion, was it the same color as that was found in the field?
It appeared to be similar in color to the hair that was at the field, yes.
Okay. Why doesn't the Detroit Police Department test for gunshot residue?
Well, I know that we officially stopped when our lab closed. We've also have been told that the state police does not test for gunshot residue tests, so we do not have anywhere to actually send test samples to be tested.
Okay. And do you have any personal knowledge as to why all of these agencies have stopped testing for gunshot residue?
I do not.
defense counsel was asking you a lot of questions about shell casings. Is it typical when you're processing a scene, sometimes you don't find any shell casings even when there's been a gun that's been fired in that scene?
It is possible, yes.
And I think I did not ask you earlier, but we looked at the photos of the phones the defense counsel was asking you about, and you did tag those phones and place them on evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Including the white Samsung phone.
Correct.
And that was placard 14.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge?
Recross.
Just one quick question. And please correct me if I'm wrong, officer. Are you a member of, I mean, is there like a nationwide federation of evidence techs, or, I mean, is that something that you're familiar with?
The closest thing that I can refer to is the International Association for Identification, which is a worldwide organization of people involved in crime scene, either crime scene search or laboratory. It's kind of an umbrella organization that's actually internationally based.
I understand the reason why you say the Detroit Police Department no longer does gun powder residue tests. You made that abundantly clear. But are you familiar with, has this been just discredited throughout that organization you mentioned as being unreliable?
That I could not speak to that.
Do you know of other police agencies or jurisdictions, if you know, that still use the gun residue testing?
I do not know.
Thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Who's your next witness?
Judge, Officer Vogler would be next, because he did have an appointment this morning, so if he is not here, then I will call one of the others.
James, J-A-M-E-S, Vogler, V-O-G-L-E-R.
The testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, sir. Could you please state your name and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Sergeant James Vogler. I work for Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety, and I've been assigned to the Action Auto Theft Task Force.
And how long have you worked for Grosse Pointe?
24 years.
And you've been a police officer that whole time?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the Auto Theft Task Force? Explain that for us.
It's a joint task force with the Detroit Police as well as Grosse Pointe Park and Harper Woods, and our focus is auto theft in the Wayne County area.
Okay, I want to direct your attention back to March 23rd of 2016. Were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
Around 12:30 in the afternoon?
Yes, I was.
And were you working by yourself or with a partner?
The entire team was working. I was in my own vehicle by myself.
Okay. And at some point in time around 12:30, did you get a notification from Officer Kolar about a truck out in a field?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and was that field at Lyford and Gilbo in the city of Detroit?
Yes, it was.
And did you respond to that location?
Yes, I did.
What was the nature of why did you respond?
Well, Officer Kolar notified the team by radio that he observed a truck in the field there at Lyford and Gilbo. It's an area where we often recover stolen vehicles, and he was going to investigate. So I began heading that way. It's a desolate area. I didn't want him investigating all by himself.
Okay. And did you continue to get radio updates from him as you were on your way to the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what were the nature of those updates?
As I was on my way there, he advised that he saw a subject by the truck, and that the subject had approached him and was asking for assistance. Said he was broken down and needed help.
Okay. Did you get additional notifications?
Yes, very shortly after that, he notified everyone to hurry up. He had a subject in custody. He had recovered a weapon, a handgun, and that there was a woman in the truck who had been severely beaten.
And so did you eventually arrive at the location?
Yes, I did.
What did you see once you arrived?
When I arrived, Officer Kolar, there were several other units that I had radio dispatch for assistance for Officer Kolar.
You yourself did?
I did, yes.
And when you say you radioed dispatch, what type of dispatch did you radio?
Detroit Police Dispatch for the precinct that Lyford and Gilboa is in.
Okay. Did you also request an EMS?
Yes, I did. So
So go on. Go ahead.
when I arrived, there was several units that had beat me to the scene. They were with Officer Kolar. There was a male subject sitting on the curb in handcuffs, and there was also some officers over by the pickup truck that was sitting in the field off the side of the road.
Okay. I want to go back. Do you see the man that was sitting on the curb in handcuffs in court today?
Yes, I do.
Can you please point to him and tell us something he's wearing?
It's the gentleman here in the dark suit with the blue tie, and got some sort of pin on his lapel.
Okay. And Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
The record may reflect, you may continue.
Thank you. And describe the truck that you observed.
It was dark blue or black, large pickup truck. Without referring to my part, I don't exactly recall the make and model.
If you referred to your report, would that refresh your recollection?
Yes, it would. There was a dark blue Chevy Silverado.
Okay. Thank you. Did you approach the truck?
Yes, I did.
What did you see when you approached the truck?
There was a female in the passenger seat. She was covered with a blanket, and she was had severe trauma to her face. The left side of her face was severely swollen, black and blue. Her eye was swollen shut. She was also bleeding from her mouth, nose, and her right eye. Upon further investigation, also there was blood on her hands. It appeared she had been stabbed in the hands, and there was blood throughout the interior of the truck.
What was her level of consciousness?
She was extremely disoriented.
Okay. And did you try to speak with her at all?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask her?
I asked her what happened.
What did she tell you?
What she said was, he was very upset because I was not honest about a previous relationship.
And is that all she was able to tell you?
That's all I could get from her.
What happened after you observed her?
Initially, I stayed with her, asked dispatch to tell EMS to expedite, get there as quickly as possible, and I just tried to stay with her, reassure her that help was coming, and waited for the EMS crew to arrive.
Once the EMS crew arrived, where did you go?
I stepped back to let them take care of the patient, and I began looking at the scene.
What did you see?
Right outside the passenger side door, where the woman was seated, there was a bloody tampon on the ground. There was also a condom wrapper, and there's also a blood trail, drops of blood in the grass, leading away from the door towards the back of the truck.
Did you find any clothing? Or did you observe any clothing?
Yes, I did. There was the blood trail led to the back of the truck, and then away from the truck south, and at one point I found there was some blood-soaked women's underpants, and then another 20 or 30 feet further away there was a blood-soaked bra and pants that were hung up in some very low branches just off the ground, and there was quite a bit of blood on the ground there too.
Do you recall notating how far the blood trail traveled back from the back end of the truck?
I did put it in my report. If I could refer to it for the exact
Would it refresh your
distance. Yes, it would.
Would it refresh your recollection?
Yes, it would.
May I approach, Judge?
Yes, you may.
Take a look at that. Let me know if your recollection is refreshed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how many feet?
Approximately 40 feet.
What did you do next?
At that point, the EMS crew had removed the patient, took her to the ambulance, and I just continued to help secure the scene to preserve evidence. We requested evidence technicians be dispatched to the location.
And did you make any other notifications?
I did notify our chief of police that this was going to be a major incident. Other than asking for EMS and asking for evidence technicians, I don't recall making other notifications.
And did that conclude your investigation into this matter?
Basically, yes. For my role, other than securing the scene, at that point, I was pretty much, my part was done.
Okay. When you arrived, were you the most senior officer on scene when you first arrived?
For my crew, yes. As far as other officers, there was quite a few people there. I don't recall if someone, a senior officer, was already on scene or arrived. Several did arrive after me.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge.
Cross-examination.
Judge, respectfully, I have no questions for the detective.
You may step down and get back next time.
Judge, the people call Officer Steen.
Very well. You solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this class you propose is going to be the truth, so you can. I do.
Could you please tell me what's your name?
Yes, ma'am.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, sir. Could you please state your name and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is DeLon Steen. I'm a corporal in Detroit Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Detroit Police Department?
22 years and 4 months.
Okay. And have you been a police officer that whole time?
I have.
Okay, and where are you currently assigned?
11th Precinct Special Operations.
And were you assigned there back on March 23rd of 2016?
I was.
And were you working that day?
I was.
Were you working by yourself or with a partner?
I had 2 partners.
And who were those partners?
Officer Antoine Spigner and Officer Robert Eiserman.
Okay. And around 12:30 in the afternoon, were you dispatched to a scene at Lyford and Gilbo in the city of Detroit?
I was.
And what's that location?
It's a residential street. It's a lot of fields. It's a fielded area. Residential street in the city of Detroit.
And did you respond to that scene?
I did.
What did you see once you arrived?
I saw the defendant here. He was sitting on the curb, handcuffed.
Okay, you indicated that you recognized the defendant. Is this the same person you see in court today, the person you saw sitting on the curb that day?
Yes, it is.
Judge, let the record reflect that the witness identified the defendant.
You may continue.
What happened next?
I saw the defendant sitting on the curb. He was handcuffed, and his clothing was covered in dry blood. His hands and his clothing, he was covered in dry blood.
Okay. And what did you do after you observed him?
After that, then I walked over to, it was a black pickup in the field. I walked over to the pickup. Then I saw a young lady sitting in the front passenger seat.
Okay, what did she look like?
She looked pretty bad. She was beaten viciously throughout her face. Her face was completely swollen.
Okay. Did you try to talk with her at all?
No, because she was like in a state of shock. She was like in a state of shock.
Okay. Did you notice any other officers who were on the scene?
There was quite a few officers there. Quite a few.
Did you observe any undercover officers?
I did. Some officers from a suburban department, from a CATS unit or something like that.
Okay, what's a CATS unit?
Commercial auto thefts.
Okay, so like an auto theft unit. Did EMS arrive at the scene?
It did.
Okay. And did you observe anything else in the scene?
That's pretty much it as far as the scene.
Okay. Did you look around the truck at all?
No, I didn't personally, no.
Okay. Do you know if your partners did?
You have to ask them. I'm not for sure.
Okay. After you were at the scene, did there come a point in time where you left to go to the hospital?
Yes.
Why did you go to the hospital?
I was directed to go to the hospital to check on the condition of the complainant.
Okay. And so at that point in time, while you were still on scene, EMS had come and taken her
They did.
to the hospital? Okay.
Yes.
And did you go to the hospital?
Yes, I went to St. John's Hospital.
Okay. And when you got there, did you encounter the victim?
At some point I did, yes.
Okay. And the victim, did you come to know as Natalia Muntean?
Correct.
Okay. And what happened when you came in contact with her?
The reason I came in contact with her because I got her personal information from the hospital staff, her
Okay.
doctor chart and condition, but the doctors and the nurses came to us, myself and my partners, and they asked us to take handcuffs off of her.
Okay.
And I had a hard time understanding that because we didn't put any handcuffs on her. I didn't notice any on her, but I had to go into the emergency room where she was, and she had a pair of black handcuffs on her arm. I just don't recall which arm it was on.
Do you know if any officer on the scene put handcuffs on her?
To my knowledge, no. There's no reason to handcuff her, no.
Okay. And so you're saying the hospital needed the handcuffs off?
Yes, in order for them to properly treat her, they need the handcuffs off. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so did you go and take the handcuffs off?
I did.
Okay. What did you do with those handcuffs?
I left them there per Detective Thomas and Detective Person. They told me to leave them there for evidence text to take pictures of the handcuffs.
Okay. I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as People's Exhibit 102. Are these the same handcuffs that you took off of the victim?
They appear so. It was a black pair of handcuffs. They appear so.
Okay. And do these look like Detroit Police Department handcuffs?
But everybody has different handcuffs, so.
Okay. What did you do after you went to the hospital?
Then I was advised to check on the well-being of the couple's 2-year-old daughter, Nadia.
Okay. And did you attempt to locate her?
Yes, we did.
And did you subsequently find her?
Yes, we did.
And where was she found? Not the address, but...
She was found at she was left at her babysitter's house in Hazel Park.
Okay. And she was in good condition?
She was in excellent condition.
Okay. I want to go back briefly to when you were at the hospital. Were you advised about the victim's clothing at all?
I wasn't personally, no.
And what was the condition of the patient when you went to the hospital to check on her?
I can give you the information if I can look at my report.
Would that refresh your recollection?
It would.
May I approach, Judge?
Oh, you want to give me that
Oh,
one?
you have it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yes. She was temp serious. You need her chart number as well?
No, thank you.
Okay, she was temp serious.
And aside from taking the handcuffs off and checking on the well-being of the daughter after then responding to the scene, did you have any other role in the investigation?
No, we stayed at the location where the daughter was. We stayed there quite some time until Child Protective Service responded.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge?
Cross-examination.
Judge, respectfully, defense has no questions for this officer.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess at this time. Please step into the jury. All right. You may be seated.
Judge, may I place a couple things on the record? May I place a couple things on the record? As it relates yesterday to Defense Exhibit B, which was entered yesterday, at the time, defense counsel represented this was something that I had turned over in discovery. It's the victim's release of confidential psychological evaluations or records. At the time, I wasn't sure. I went back. I've now double-checked all of the records that I have. I did not have this. This was not something that I turned over. I had never seen this before. So I just wanted the record to be clear that this was not something that I turned over. This was something that they got. I don't know how. If it would have been mine, it would have been redacted, and I would have had to subpoena it with the court's permission. So I just wanted the record to be clear about that.
Judge, in brief response to that, as you know, we took over this case. We received a complete file from previous attorney in discovery. Madam Prosecutor, as you can see, has turned over a voluminous amount of discovery to us, has supplemented it through emails as well as CD-ROM discs. This was presented by somebody to either ourselves or to an attorney that was our predecessor, and it's been accepted in evidence and has been testified to in open court. I see no reason to backtrack on this now. We're not trying to pull any games or anything, Judge. It was approved by the court and was entered into evidence.
Very well. All right. Anything else?
The only other thing I have, Judge, I've noticed that this is the second day that the defendant has this doll on his lapel, and I've also noticed today that he has a toy on his wrist that he is constantly playing with, and it appears showing off to the jury. I just don't want any attempt at any undue sympathy from the jury. I don't know what this doll is on his lapel. I don't know why he's wearing it. If it was an intimidation tactic when the complainant testified yesterday, I don't know. So I just want the record to be clear about that as well, and to ask that he not display and play with it so that the jury is able to see it in any attempt to get sympathy.
Response?
Respectfully, Judge, I don't know how to respond to that.
I don't know how to take it either. All right. I'm not going to do it. I don't see what the problem is.
That's fine, Judge. I just wanted the record to...
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Judge, may I approach the prosecutor just very briefly? Take
you a good luck charm.
Just take 1 minute.
Yeah, go ahead. There's other matters the court can take care of while you're discussing this.
So, do you want us to come back, or?
Well, we're going to take a break, but I've got another matter right
I understand. Thank you, Judge.
You two can still talk. Yeah, they can vacate the judge.
Can you say what you're saying before we leave?
We call that.
Councilman Turner, can you step up? Right in the courtroom, the judge on the record. Case number 15-000-292, People versus Omar Demetrius Turner, before the court for a probation violation sentence. Parties are present, appearance please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ernest Friedman appearing on behalf of Mr. Turner.
Omar Demetrius Turner.
Morning.
Good morning.
You ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
I've had, well, there's, I reviewed the file. There is no pre-sentence report.
Why is that?
Mr. Turner was already he was in jail in Livonia.
Why was he in jail?
He was in jail for pleading guilty to resisting arrest. He had a matter in Livonia. He went into a drugstore. The proprietors of the drugstore felt that the prescription was false or whatever. It wasn't his prescription. He was there to buy or to get a prescription for somebody else. The proprietor called the police. They came. Mr. Turner didn't know why they were there, what they were doing, and he wanted to leave. They arrested him, and he was charged with resisting arrest and fleeing. And the matter was disposed of in Livonia District Court by Judge Sean Kavanaugh, and he was sentenced to 30 days in jail. During this time, he's lost his home, and there was a struggle with the Livonia police. He broke his hand, and he was sentenced to 30 days in jail.
So he was in jail during the time that he was supposed to have been interviewed for the pre-sentence report?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, if I keep him out on bond and set another date, are you trustworthy?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, well, make sure that you cooperate with the representative so we can get this report done. We need another date for all of this.
Okay, August the 5th?
That's fine.
Fine.
All right.
Okay.
Your Honor, could we have this heard in the afternoon? I don't know.
Around, yeah, we can do it around lunchtime.
Okay.
Just notify the court.
Okay. I don't need to be here, remain here. Oh.
Have a seat, what's your paperwork?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
10 minutes. Notify me 10
Turner, is your attorney retained?
Yeah.